More questions? We've got one here, and we've got one here, and we've got one here. So mostly on this half of the room.
Yeah, thank you. I'd introduce myself, Margaret from the Kenya High Commission. Mine is to thank the many NGOs, charities which are working in Kenya, in Africa, to empower the girl child. But something that I would wish to see is the voice of the child being so much advocated. I've been here in the UK for 3 years, and I've seen the voice of the child is respected by the governments here and even by the parents themselves. I wish we could see the same in Africa. We may be trying. I know in Kenya we are trying very much to empower the girl child and the women. But at one time I worked closely with an NGO in the field. I'm an educationist that was working with the Save the Children Canada. And they had this very, very impressive program, Rights of the Child. And I saw children going literally and bringing back their colleagues who have been married off. And for the first time, the community started to think, and they started respecting children. They started even fearing them. Oh, I don't want to see those children coming here to cause chaos when I marry off my daughter, so should rather remain in school. I wish you could try to change the mindsets of our parents and our governments that the voice of the child is very, very important in every corner of the world. Number two, I'm very happy somebody has talked about evidence here. You're doing a lot of research back in wherever you are working, and I say we appreciate every day meeting either a person who is working in Kenya or in some part of Africa to support us, and we do appreciate as governments. But one thing that is lacking is the evidence that you're working there. I have seen so many girls here supported. I know even Lena Cheche are dealing with something, supporting us in special education. We need evidence, we need data. And why do we need it? So that we can also appreciate. You know, if somebody comes to, if you have a problem in your house, sometimes you tend to tolerate it. But when somebody out there comes and tells you, hey, by the way, this is how bad this problem is, you will sit down and say, oh, can I improve on it? So that the public doesn't see. Please help our governments to change by sharing what you find, your research findings with us and with the right authorities. If you're working in the Ministry of Health, let the Ministry of Health, health issues, let the Ministry of Health know what you are doing so that they are able even to use that evidence, as somebody has said here, to formulate some policies. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Oh, we had a question from just beside you there, the lady. Yeah, the lady in the glasses. Yeah, thanks.
Sorry, this is just a query about going forward. I was just thinking about the way in which one gathers evidence from within the community. I mean, it's very important to get evidence with NGOs, but NGOs can also help us do community-based research. So I've just finished doing 1 year of research in Tamil Nadu on using students who've come out of poverty households, who've moved to towns to find education, so they're in higher education. And they provide the basis to go back to their own villages, and they're the peers. And I was thinking about it because you got technology on your blurb, and I was wondering, East Africa does it much better than South Asia. So they've got smartphones, they can talk to each other, but in the village they've got text phones. And I'm working with the engineering department to create an app that can be used either as text or as more broadband. So there are new technologies now which weren't even there 8 months ago. Android came out with a 4.0, and it's going to be in East Africa next year. So, just in terms of maybe this is a fantastic opportunity. So thank you, Pauline, for us across the university to talk. Thank you.
Well, I think we'll just pause there, because those two questions, one about the voice of the child and one about the community as a resource for research, are some way related. Fiona, would you like to?
Yes, I was actually going to say that the good thing about our network, I mentioned earlier on that it's young women who have an experience of growing up in poverty and going to school and defying the odds and succeeding. They know the nuances in the communities, and they are the ones who are leading especially on our work on child protection, mobilizing the community, working with students in schools, forming pupil councils, making sure that, you know, they raise their voices on the issues that are happening in the community, and going back to the duty bearers in their communities, going to the chiefs and saying that from our experience, this is what has been happening and it needs to be addressed and we need your help. And therefore the chiefs are able to respond to the voices of the young women from our network who are raising those issues and who are also mobilizing the children in schools to raise their voice against abuse.
Okay. And Lucy, have you, through your programs, had much experience with the community resource and the role of the community in research?
Well, I mean, I think that's a very important point, this issue of how research is positioned in relation to communities. And I think for us, that has been absolutely fundamental in igniting onward action around girls' education and other issues. Because I think it is about ensuring that research is not an extractive process. And I think to your point around mobile technologies, increasingly means that there are opportunities to empower young people to be enumerators and for them to have access to the data and analysis, and for then that data and analysis to be packaged in a way that can be shared with communities and can ignite the kind of forums and discussions that can lead to onward action. So I think there is a very exciting opportunity opening up through new technologies if we position these right in relation to how that data is gathered. But I think it is about how we position that is critical. And I think the governance and the measures that we put in place around gathering that data is critical, so that we don't place young women in a position of vulnerability when they're seen as policing teachers' attendance in schools, for example. We have to get that governance right around how the data is gathered, who is it shared with, how is that used then in conversation locally. So I think that this whole issue of data and how it can be empowering and rather than extractive is a very important one, and mobile technologies are opening up a whole new opportunity there, I would say.
Okay. Now, more questions. We have, sorry, yeah, we have one at the side, yeah, and then one just below the gentleman in the glass.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Laura Savage from DFID. We heard in the first panel today a call for action for more evidence on what works and on costs. And we've heard here an explanation or an outline, at least, of some of the initial research priorities. You've got at least, I think, 3 members of the International Building Evidence and Education Network in the room, who are meeting next month, hosted generously by the government of Norway after the Oslo summit. And if you had 3 things to say to that network of over 40 donors of education research, what would you say to them?
Okay, let's take another question or two and just allow people to. I think there's a gentleman here in a dark jacket and glasses just here, yeah. And then maybe one more.
Thank you. My name is Steve Packer from the UK Forum for Education and Development, and first of all I'd like to offer congratulations on the new centre and a very exciting partnership. We bandy around the term policymakers. In my experience, that's a pretty elusive group. Defining who they are in any one individual country is a task in itself. Are they people in power with political sway and resources? Are they truly technical education planners? How long do they last in the jobs in which they're in? My question is directly to CAMFED. We've had long experience now of working in a number of countries, and I'd like to know the lessons you've learned about how truly to engage with policy in ways that are transformative as we see the word.
Okay, those are two big questions there, and I wonder if we could take the first one first, and to panel members, don't feel obliged to come up with 3 each, but if you come up with 1 each, that would be fine. Okay, so could we try that? What's one or two things maybe that you would say to these international networks? Yeah, Mike?
Well, I'm going to say three which are interrelated.
Okay.
So the first is to track children and young people over time, that we're really only going to be able to understand where the problems are and the solutions are if we track children over their lifetime. Now, we have the sort of great knowledge base from Young Lives. For those that you don't know, it's been undertaken in 4 countries, funded by DFID, has really provided a rich resource. But actually, even though that's relatively large scale compared to what we have, it's still small scale, and it's only in 4 countries. We don't have that type of resource in most countries in which we are working. Related to that is that I would say that we really need to focus the research on looking at these transitions. So transitions from early childhood into primary school. We know that many of the problems children face happen before they even start school. Then the transition from primary to secondary, which we were hearing, is why a lot of the obstacles happen for girls when they reach adolescence. And then the transition from adolescence into work. Now, when I say adolescence, I wasn't going to say secondary school, because many young girls don't make it into secondary school. Even if they're in school, they're still in primary school, and then they will leave and go out into the world, whether that is into a world of work or into the world of giving birth at a very early age, etc., will depend very much on what experiences they've had earlier in their life. So that's the second one. And then I would say the third one, given that this is a network primarily of donors, is put your money where your mouth is, that you want us to come up with high quality research and evidence that really gives this big picture and tells us what's happening over time, then this actually does cost money. And it's too easy to say that we need the evidence and we need it fast. We also need the resources to actually make sure that we are able to deliver on that.
Fiona?
I would say it's very important to adopt a long-term approach, that we should often move away from being project-based to being holistic, so that, the intervention is not just like a once-off. It needs to be over a long time to be able to achieve impact.
Okay. And Lucy, do you want to say what your one or two bits of advice would be, and then maybe go to tackle the second question that was directed to you?
Sure. I mean, I think on the kind of research priorities, I would absolutely support what Pauline said. And I think the longitudinal opportunities that we have in this partnership, because CAMFED's work with girls and young women is for the long term, and so the opportunity to explore at scale the kind of life choices and decisions young women are making and what those influences are, I think are very important. I think we also have a real opportunity with the evidence base to be digging down on this question of quality education, what those relevant skills are that are enabling young people to make a successful transition, and what the interlinkages are with some of the core foundational skills. So I think quality and transition are two areas that we can really dig down on. In terms of the second question, before I come to it, I just want, Fiona, if you had anything you wanted to say on that second question before I jump in. Do you want me to go ahead? Okay. So Steve, the issue of policymakers and the influence there, I think for us, just as the premise for us is working with communities, the premise for us is working with government systems. And in fact, last year, the OECD recognised CAMFED as best practice in taking development innovation to scale because of our governance model and the way in which we engaged with government school systems in order to achieve scale of opportunity for girls and young women. And I think that the reason we've been able to really build on those quality of relationships is because it has not been about us going in with solutions. It has been about a collaborative partnership in which we have looked at what different parties can bring to the table, and recognising that those government systems are not a bureaucratic constraint, which is, I think, how some may approach, but that one can work with those systems and house and incubate innovation within those systems in order to leapfrog some of the issues that we are seeing. And as a result, as an organisation, we may be small, but we have a huge network that we're able to mobilise. And I think you know some of them, Steve, like Barbara Chalangwa, who was a former permanent secretary in Zambia, and others, who are now working with us to champion and engage with other government ministries to look at how some of these, the practical application of these can be extended. So I think that link with the government systems for us and how one can innovate with and engage is absolutely critical. And I'd say that it has enabled us to go to places where we would never have been able to. One of the solutions that we've been working on is how young people who have graduated from secondary school can engage back in the school system to help tackle some of these broader life skills to enable young people to succeed in the transition. And it's because of the quality of the relationships that we've had with governments that we've been able to embrace these kind of innovative ways of looking at how we push up learning outcomes, bringing in partnerships with the private sector and negotiating those partnerships, including with government ministries. So I think it's putting those at the forefront and engaging with those government school systems has been absolutely fundamental to what we've been able to achieve.
Thanks, Lucy.